PlayStation 1 was more than a console. It was a game changer. Not only did it give rise to some of the biggest and most iconic series of all time, but it cemented the long-awaited transition from 2D to 3D graphics. When the PS1 arrived, it offered far more than just a new dimension. Its manifold innovations allowed us to immerse ourselves in deeper stories and more complex universes, all encapsulated within its 32 bits of power.
2 bits, 4 bits, 8 bits, 16 bits, 32 bits.
The distinctive look of PlayStation games was the result of console limitations, and to some extent artistic decisions. More than 2 decades later, a series of strange and fascinating experimental games are emerging, inspired by those idiosyncrasies that were once considered the telltale weaknesses of the hardware. And then just as today we understand that pixel art is not just low-fidelity 2D art, instead a unique style in its own right, in this video we will explore why these graphics from yesteryear are re-emerging today. And what can this style offer? Why does it work so well at scaring the crap out of us? In a generation that demands more and more realism, what is all this? Is this all just a simple walk down nostalgia lane? Or is it something else? To say that this system was an enormous leap forward for graphics might just be the understatement of the century. Game developers were like, yo, we have 3D now. Let's start throwing rotating 3D objects at the player whenever we can. There was a sudden explosion of creative output. Some devs built ambitious worlds with minute attention to detail. Looking back, the console literally only had 1 megabyte of VRAM. Developers had to be very economical with the number of polygons their models used, and typically keeping things under 500 triangles. This need to conserve resources resulted in empty environments like liminal spaces that felt as if they were hiding something. Furthermore, games were generally only able to render like the least amount of chunks ever. And then there were phenomena such as polygons moving for no apparent reason. The wobbly and nervous, timid little vertices. Embracing these effects, or rather side effects, is essentially celebrating what made these games unique. They're what gives the PlayStation 1 its allure, its interesting, distinctive look that's all too easy to pick out from the crowd. It's true that today's games can immerse us in lush, beautiful worlds that, under the right conditions, can feel almost indistinguishable from reality. But there are those who feel that something was lost during this transition, a magical, special sensation that is somehow absent in modern graphics. And for many, it's also just a simple reminder of the days when games were just games, where your imagination simply filled in the gaps. So, what would happen if we took a modern game and tried to make it look like the X-Files games for the PS1? This is what we call a DEMAKE. If a remake tries to recreate something using current technology, improving graphics, music, whatever you can think of, then the humble DEMAKE, by contrast, endeavors to accomplish just the opposite, mimicking old technology to recreate something new and make it seem, well, classic. It's a devolution, an ode to old-school aesthetics, and more than presenting a visual style from the past to new audiences, it's about distilling modern games to their sheer artistic merits. Would you have fallen in love with your favorite AAA title if it looked like this? It helps us appreciate game design and look beyond graphical superficiality. This is location Withheld. This is its DEMAKE. It's the same game, the only difference being graphical fidelity. The low-resolution transformation compresses colors and pixelates almost everything in front of you. The photos become indiscernible, something just doesn't seem exactly right. The office in the original location Withheld feels immersive. You interact with objects, rotate them, seeing every detail, while the DEMAKE will only show you a static image, accompanied by text. All of this deprives the player of important visual information in subtle ways that the original couldn't, and as a result, there's more tension. Compare it and tell me what intensified. You can't deny it looks way more spooky. Like, way more spooky. According to the highly scientific survey we carried out in the Community tab, peer-reviewed by the New England Journal of Cutting Edgery, more than 70% of you did not have a PS1. Perhaps because you had another console, or because growing up you only really played at arcades. But still, you may not have experienced it firsthand, but you know intuitively when a game feels like it's from that era, an era perhaps before your own, yet still somehow nostalgic. But as we just saw, also still capable of being fucking terrifying, as horror indie developers are well aware.
Remember Alf? He's back in pod form.
But then you find projects like The Big Catch. This game is somewhat reminiscent of Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and all those other fast-paced games with levels that had super upbeat music. It captures that 90s essence of pure fun, but adds an extra layer of sophistication by incorporating some extra knowledge and experience gained from 2 subsequent decades of game development. Can you guess which graphics engine this is? Now, believe it or not, this game was made using none other than Unreal Engine. And it really shows just what Unreal is capable of. This is from the YouTube channel Marcis, and it's truly a testament to the power of simplicity. Although the word simplicity is debatable here, as it takes an inhuman level of attention to detail to capture the PS1 aesthetic the way they have. Many devs are embracing the limitations and restrictions of an age-long past. They gather inspiration from the graphics, the gameplay, and even the narratives, sometimes to create a game that we didn't even realize we've long been dreaming of. Resident Evil was one of Shinji Mikami's 2 great contributions to the human race, the other being a charming little dinosaur game that made the phrase "Rar XD" feel like a genuine threat. Dino Crisis was a horror experience that was kind of like if someone took Resident Evil and Jurassic Park and gave them a bit of a unique spin. It was an action horror adventure brimming with puzzles, exploration, and gore. Now, after 3 installments, the latest one being released in 2003, we haven't seen anything for more than 20 years on the Dino Crisis front. I'm afraid that Capcom shows no signs of digging up this fossil. I recently came across a game that, at first glance, was pure eye candy. I spontaneously screamed, "I have to make a video for it." And that's when everyone in the Walmart parking lot began staring at me, but I didn't care. I rushed home and began the research phase. And that's when I fell into the rabbit hole of modern games that pay homage to the once dominant PS1 aesthetic. So, literally, you have Compound Fracture to thank for this video. This is a first-person survival horror game that takes enormous inspiration from the Dino Crisis series. What I like most is that this game not only manages to almost perfectly capture that stunning graphical style of the PS1, but it also adds detailed modern flourishes, like atmospheric lighting. And to me, it feels like a PlayStation dev team in the mid-90s figured out some esoteric optimization techniques to render more visual elements. Now, how can something that looks so old look so fresh at the same time? Like Stephen King once famously said, "Sooner or later, everything old is new again." The PS1 had a charm all its own, and people are coming around to that fact, especially after years of shunning its quote-unquote outdated tech. They may have been some subtle something that was lost during the transition from the 32-bit era to now, but what was that special something? And do you agree? For me, in a world of ray tracing, AI facial animation, and hyper-realism, they are a breath of fresh air that brings back pixelated nostalgia for a bygone era.